positive outcomes for MontPac clients. We're going to have better reporting. We're going to be more efficient. You'll probably have fewer tools in your stack, more consolidated, and really it's about scale.
For everybody else, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Debunking the Myths of NetSuite. This is hosted by NetSuite themselves and also by a BPO partner, MontPac. Today we have two, but three kind of panelists. We have Michael Kulish, who is the Regional Vice President for North America for both outsourcing and channel partnerships with NetSuite. Followed that by is the CEO of MontPac. We are a BPO partner of NetSuite, Monty Montgomery. Shortly after that, we're going to have Mr. Frank Schaefer, who is the Senior Solution Consultant to the Stars with NetSuite's going to walk through a quick demo of NetSuite product. And then just for some last minute kind of housekeeping items and what have you is, I think everybody that's joining, your microphones are mute. I'm going to be paying attention to the chat. And so if you have a question, please feel free and type it into the chat. And throughout the presentation, if it feels like it's the right time to ask the question based on where we are, I'll go ahead and interrupt and ask the question. Otherwise, we have a Q&A session at the end, and we will go to the Q&A at that point in time and read the questions aloud. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Michael Kulish from NetSuite to talk to you a little bit further about debunking the myths of NetSuite. So with that, take it away, Mr. Kulish, sir.
Don and MontPac team, I really appreciate the time today, and I appreciate the time of all the folks that are joining us today. Hopefully we have a great presentation for you today, debunking some of the myths of NetSuite and BPO. Just by way of introduction, I run the outsourcing program at NetSuite. I've been here for quite some time and actually started the program. So I am the expert here, and hopefully you can get some great insight from us today. So the slide that I've been showing is a slide that I like to start with because I understand that you go to these presentations and you say, well, Mike, you're not going to say anything bad about NetSuite. You work at NetSuite, and of course you're going to say it's great. This is a slide that shows companies that have gone public over the last 10 years or so, 12 years. And the system that they're running. So this is so you can see that 61% of companies that have gotten a VC investment and gone public over the last 12 years have chosen NetSuite. So these are technology companies that are making choices about technology, and they are overwhelmingly choosing NetSuite. 61% again running NetSuite, and the other 40% or 39% are running other systems, right? So a Microsoft or an SAP or an Oracle, right? Those guys share, everybody else shares 39%. NetSuite is 61%. So I think that this is just, again, the market telling you that NetSuite is a great solution for growing companies or tech companies and software companies. I think that, again, one of the reasons that we're talking about myths is that there's a lot of myths that NetSuite's not a choice for early stage companies. That's not the case, and we'll talk about that today. So a little bit of background on NetSuite. So we were the first cloud company, and specifically the first cloud ERP company. We beat Salesforce.com by a few months. We were actually funded by Larry Ellison, just like Salesforce was funded by Larry Ellison, and then actually were acquired by Oracle in roughly 2018. We are a global firm, and again, just speaking to the market and putting aside everything I say about how great we are, NetSuite has grown really since I've been here and since our birth at between 25 and 30% a year. We have about 43,000 customers worldwide and at about 6,000 customers a month. Again, NetSuite is not just for mid-market firms or for large firms. We would not be adding 6,000 clients per year if we were not working with smaller companies, especially in the outsourcing side. We work with pre-revenue startups, right? So it is, again, I think a myth that NetSuite is only for mid-market firms. And again, we are really the solution of choice for fast growth firms and firms that have broader needs. So I think this slide is really kind of the secret to NetSuite's success over the last 20 or 25 years since our inception. First off, NetSuite has versions of NetSuite or industry versions of NetSuite to address specifically the needs of specific industries. So, if you are a software company, there's a great rev rec capability. Software companies often have project management, and so that the software version of NetSuite will have project management built in. But if you're a wholesale distribution company or a retailer, you're not going to need project management. So the NetSuite version that you get, it's the same underlying capabilities, but it has different configurations just out of the box turned on that speak to a retail firm or speak to a manufacturing firm or speak to an advertising firm. So NetSuite really does have these out-of-the-box capabilities that you can configure and customize on top of that out-of-the-box capability that really speak to and address specifically the needs of companies in those industries. The other thing that has been really the secret to NetSuite success in my experience over my 20 years at NetSuite is that, again, there is no size limitation of NetSuite. And I don't think that any other software firm can say this. QuickBooks might fit into that outsourcing and emerging bucket in that light green category, but they're not going to be an enterprise, right? If you're an enterprise using QuickBooks, you have more than 500 million in revenue using QuickBooks, you're doing something wrong, right? That is not going to work for you very well. NetSuite really can work with companies of any size. Again, as the person that runs outsourcing, we all the time, daily, add firms that are pre-revenue to NetSuite via the outsourcing program. Our core market probably is that mid-market and corporate, but we do also have enterprise firms that are on NetSuite. So really, there's no size limitation of NetSuite. And again, I don't think that you can say that about any other software firms. But the message here is that if you get on NetSuite when you are a smaller company, when you are pre-revenue or early stage, you never have to re-implement. NetSuite will grow with your needs. We will address your needs as you grow. And again, that really is not the case with any other software solution. You're going to have to switch or add 10, 20, 30 other systems to address your requirements, which we'll talk about a little more in a second. In terms of NetSuite, from a functional perspective, NetSuite again has a lot of capabilities. I kind of touched on the fact that if you're a software company, maybe you need project management. If you're a wholesale distribution company, maybe you need warehouse management. And again, maybe the third secret to NetSuite success is that it has an extensive set of capabilities, right? So we do have the core accounting that is, again, suitable for companies anywhere from a pre-revenue startup to a Fortune 500 global firm operating internationally. We have HR capabilities. We have a lot of CRM, e-commerce capabilities. If you don't want to use our native CRM or e-commerce, we have a great set of connectors so you can connect to your solution of choice. Really gives you options whether you want to use that suite capability, or if you might need a point solution, you can do that, right? Absolutely, positively possible. And then on the kind of product side, right, if you're selling widgets, you have inventory and order management, procurement, warehouse management, supply chain, right? A great set of capabilities around inventory if again, you're selling products as opposed to services. And again, at the project management side, we have billion-dollar firms that are using NetSuite for the project management capability. So again, guys, this is really the one of the secrets to NetSuite success. One of the many is that really I think with other systems you have to weave together 4, 5, 6, 7 different solutions. And with NetSuite, that's really not the case. Again, if you need a specialized solution, we have an extensive set of partners that are pre-integrated with NetSuite, and also the ability to build custom integrations to NetSuite. So the money slide here, the presentation is called NetSuite Myths. And so we're going to go through some of these myths here. I think the first myth that we talk about, and we'll go into a little more detail on all of these, is that NetSuite implementations are time consuming and difficult. Maybe if you worked at a mid-market firm and then you moved to a smaller firm, maybe you implemented NetSuite and it took a few months under the outsourcing realm or working with MontPac, you do that very quickly and efficiently. There's another perception out there that NetSuite is too complex for small business. That's not the case, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then I think that there's also a perception that NetSuite's too expensive for an outsourcing platform. This is one of the big ones that we get, and that is not the case. And again, we'll talk about why that is specifically. So let's get into the first myth in a little bit more depth and detail. So again, I think that if you've worked at a mid-market company, you've gone through a implementation, there is a huge process that you go through that configures it to your specific requirements, and it does which takes some time. In the outsourcing world, the best practice and what we are working with MontPac on is being able to stand up NetSuite in a very short period of time, right? The period of time, I think, depends a little bit on some specifics. It could be anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, but it is not a multi-month process, right? Now you are doing those setups to a best practices standard. And then once you've done the setup to the best practices standard, you can customize on top of that. It will be modified and configured and customized to your requirements as needed. But as a smaller company, out of the box, is kind of the standard, right? It's going to work for you because again, you have that industry specific solution. It's got workflows, it's got permissions, it's got all that's out of the box. You don't have to worry about it, right? It's kind of fire and forget. As a small company, you've got enough to worry about running your business and growing it. So NetSuite's just there, and it's going to work. But then, as you need to customize the solution and make it specific to your requirements or to your workflows, you can absolutely adjust those configurations and customizations using a number of tools. NetSuite's a very flexible system. And again, it really is just kind of like start using it under the best practices methodology or model and then customize. But because of that, you can put it in place very, very quickly under an outsourcing or a BPO type of a model. All right, myth number 2 is that NetSuite is too complex for small business. Again, in a number of these setups that are done very quickly, it's really core financials, right, is what we start with. So it's your GL, your reporting, your bank rec, your accounts payable, closing the books, doing your monthly statements, I guess financial reporting, and kind of setting up that core system. Now, of course, you can have a little bit more extensive set of requirements or set of capabilities as you set this up. Again, if you're using the wholesale distribution version, the retail version, you're going to have a little bit on the inventory management and such. But it is, it's a pretty straightforward setup, and again, appropriate and going to be very, useful and meet all the needs of a smaller company. As you grow, though, you might need to add multi-subsidiary capability. You might need procurement. You might need fixed assets as you start to buy equipment and need to depreciate that equipment. Again, you can add that very easily as it's needed. As you grow, again, if you're a software company, you might need to add revenue recognition. You might need to add subscription billing. Might need to add as a wholesale distributing company warehouse management, right? So again, you're just snapping these capabilities on as they're needed as you grow. Again, instead of going out and buying another system, integrating it, learning that system, training your people on that system, figuring out, if it doesn't work, whose fault is it that doesn't work, right? Hit the easy button, right? You snap that onto NetSuite as you need that. It works. It's the same code base. It's all designed to work together, and again, just going to allow you to focus on your business, running your business instead of running your ERP system. Now, under the BPO model, we should say that the license is kind of acquired and managed by MontPac. But if you ever do want to bring that license in-house, it is a very simple process. Takes a day or two, right, to transition the license to you. MontPac can still do the outsourcing on top of the license that you own, and again, you just can transfer that license to your ownership. Very simple, very easy, and again, just continue to grow without having to worry about your underlying or your back-end technology. And as you do that, right, there's a bunch of other things you can add. Right, multi-book accounting, which is like for international firms. We have Oracle solutions now that you can snap onto NetSuite very easily, like planning and budgeting or warehouse analytics. Right, very, very straightforward to do. All right, myth number 3, that NetSuite is too expensive for a BPO platform. I actually built this slide maybe 2-3 years ago. I think that NetSuite actually, this is the base cost, let's call it, of NetSuite, of Intacct, of QuickBooks Zero, some of the other systems that you might be considering or might be using currently. NetSuite actually now, I think under the outsourcing, is actually lower cost than some of these solutions, believe it or not. I think that's the way that we intended it because NetSuite clearly has a lot more capabilities than these other solutions. But NetSuite is actually at least on par, if not lower cost than some of these other solutions. But let's say you wanted to add CRM. NetSuite, that's part of the solution. You don't have to pay extra for CRM. These other solutions you do. Add expense reporting. That's going to add some cost. Project and inventory, employee management, integration of those systems. That's going to have a cost. That is all built into NetSuite. You have a small cost for multi-subsidiary. If you add multi-subsidiary to Intacct, they charge you for every single subsidiary. So that gets real. This bar is actually probably off the chart. And with QuickBooks and Xero, if you want a multi-subsidiary, you gotta buy more licenses, right? You can't do multi-subsidiary. I mean, QuickBooks added multi-subsidiary, but they charge you like a lot for that, and we can talk about how well that works. But so the best option, let's say with QuickBooks and Xero, if you need multi-subsidiary, is having 5 or 10 or 20 different instances or different accounts, and that just makes it very difficult. Whereas with NetSuite, again, you hit the easy button, add that multi-subsidiary capability at small cost, and it all just works. All right, last thing here, hot topic, AI, right? So I think that one of the things that I think you should consider, actually maybe two things you want to consider with artificial intelligence. This is going to have a big impact on the market. It's going to have a big impact on any company here that is putting in a system to run their company. NetSuite owns the compute, right? We are running in Oracle data centers. You as a small company are running on the same infrastructure, the same databases, the same security as Oracle, Fortune 100 firms, Fortune 10 firms. You're running the same infrastructure, getting the same security standards as those companies, even as a small business. And we are running all of the AI compute, right? We have the chips in our data centers. We have access to those, right? Some of these other solutions, believe they run even Intuit running in a data center of a third party. They don't have the compute. If there is a squeeze and that cost goes up, I call it Uber surge pricing for your AI capabilities, it's going to cost you a lot. Whereas with NetSuite, because we own that whole stack, we're going to be able to manage that cost for you if that ever happens. And the last thing is, because you have a suite with NetSuite, everything is in the same system. So if you need to run an AI agent across finance and inventory, or finance and project management, or finance and reporting, because that's all in the same system, it is going to run much more easily, right? I think if you're trying to run an AI agent for, with Intact for finances, and some system for inventory, and another system for reporting, and another system for this and that, I've heard these companies say, well, that's what AI is for. That's just not the case, right? Again, hit the easy button. You have these AI agents that are going to be able to run on top of NetSuite and manage across all of your operations, because it's all in one data model, and do that very, very easily. And we are, again, the last thing here, we are running the same AIs that Oracle is developing for their customers, are very similar, right? So you're getting the benefit of those enterprise class AI agents, AI capabilities as a small company, and that is just invaluable, right? So that is my piece of the presentation. I think I maybe went 2 minutes over, so apologize to the next folks. But please let me know. I'll be on, and if there's any questions on any of that, please do let me know, and we'll be happy to answer those as we get to them.
Michael, thank you so very much. We have the demo slide here. I guess, Frank, if you want to hop right in and do a quick demo, since it's all nice and fresh in everybody's minds here, that would be great. And then we'll hand it off to Monty to wrap things up before we go to Q&A. So Frank, take it away.
Sure. Yeah. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Schaefer, and I'm a solution consultant. Been with NetSuite for about 8 years, and I work with companies across many different verticals and technologies. And today I'm going to be showing you a demonstration of NetSuite that's kind of geared towards the tech space. So a lot of what you just saw in the PowerPoint, we're going to see come live here in my demo. So to start with, first of all, I want to point out that what you're seeing on the dashboard that I'm presenting right now is pre-built suite success capabilities. So we've worked with NetSuite with tens of thousands of companies, and what we've learned, what makes them efficient when we implement them, is now built out here in my dashboard. So for example, in my role, I need to know, well, what's going on in my business, and what types of activities do I need to focus on? So I've got these reminders here that are showing me, well, when I log into NetSuite this morning, what do I need to get done? I've got some payments to approve and journal entries to review and approve. And perhaps I can drill into one of these, like these 40 sales orders to approve, and quickly drill down into one of those sales orders that needs approval, make a decision after reviewing the data, and quickly approve or reject the sales order, get it off of my plate. Now, if I want to navigate over to the customer account, what I'm showing here is that in NetSuite, it's easy to get from some piece of data, a transaction or an event on my dashboard, down to the lowest level of detail, so that I can make a decision about an activity that I need to complete. And in this case, I had a sales order for this company, Calfor. If I look in the financial tab, I see that they are 90 days overdue. I'm probably not going to approve that sales order. So I made my decision, getting it off my plate. Now, when I go back to my home dashboard, in addition to those reminders that I just showed, there is a lot of additional content. And now, some of this content may not be relevant to everybody, but the core concept is here, what you need to get your job done is what you'll see in NetSuite. For example, as controller, the role that I'm currently leveraging, I'm responsible for monitoring the health of my business and explaining, for example, why are my sales, my payables, my receivables, etc., trending the way they are. And if I notice here, my sales numbers down a little bit, period over period. Well, let's drill into the prior period, that $42 million number. And here I'm able to see all the sales and I'm seeing that company, Calfor, show up. I want to understand, what did I bill them for last month that might be contributing to my prior period number being much higher? Well, I immediately see that there's a $2.6 million SaaS license that I billed to Calfor. So of course that contributes towards my sales number previously. And now I know, well, why are my sales maybe trending down? Because I had that extraordinary event last month. So again, NetSuite will give you the tools on your screen so you can make a decision, so you can understand your business's performance. And that is both businesses that perhaps have a single entity in the US, one subsidiary, or like I have in my account, I have subsidiaries or entities across the globe. So NetSuite can work for the smallest companies that are perhaps a startup to very large companies that span the globe and have those truly global operations. And if you do have that wide-reaching business, you're going to see it all in one single instance of NetSuite. For example, in my subsidiary navigator, if I click into my UK business, I'm just clicking into the icon, you'll notice in the background, my key performance indicators are specific to my UK business. They are denominated in pound sterling, which is my functional UK business currency. My reminders over in the upper right or left corner of the screen are focused on the UK subsidiary. Now, if I want to see perhaps an EMEA level consolidation of my subsidiary structure, I click on the icon and now notice my key performance indicators are denominated in euros, which is my functional currency for EMEA consolidation. I can click over to the parent and see a global consolidation. I'm doing all this with just a few mouse clicks. So it's very efficient, again, in NetSuite to see your entire business or focus on one part of it at a time. Now, not only do you get all of this visibility in NetSuite to your entire business, no matter how small and startup or large and established it is, but also there are significant automations that your teams can focus on and leverage to get their job done. And I've got just a few examples here. So you'll notice I have shortcuts that I've baked into my dashboard here so I can get to items that I quickly need to take action on. For example, I need to know, what is my cash position? Well, if I click on my cash 360, notice I'm opening up in another tab here. Now, while that's opening, I can go back here and open up other shortcuts. So I want to also look at some amortization schedules and understand, what prepaids am I managing in NetSuite? So here I see my cash forecast. What will my cash look like based on my open AR and AP and other data in NetSuite? What am I expecting to pay out and receive? This is the type of data that you will see in NetSuite. As you transact, it gets updated real time. And now you've got information that's going to help you make decisions. And in this case, manage your cash. Another example here, I've got a list of amortization schedules. Now, I'm going to drill into the source on one of these. It's going to be a vendor bill. So the premise is, let's automate as much as we can in NetSuite so that your teams are not necessarily processing transactions, but they're monitoring and reviewing So this is a great example where I have this vendor bill from Freeze Electronics that is paid in full. Now, it is for an insurance expense, and I have decided to amortize it, meaning I want to spread that expense out over the course of a year. So NetSuite created this amortization schedule for me with all of the rules that define how and when will that expense be posted and when will I see it in my income statement. So by accounting period, this is automating my prepaid management, and NetSuite is automatically making the journal entries for me. So now my accounting staff or my AP staff is monitoring these activities and validating them and auditing them rather than going in and making a journal entry each month to post that expense. Just another example of the automation that you get with NetSuite. I call it set it and forget it. Now, we saw an example here, an amortization schedule. We saw our cash forecast. Those are just a few of the automations and reports that are available with NetSuite. I want to point out the income statement, right? It's a very basic financial report. Well, in NetSuite, if I search for my income statement, you'll notice I have a couple of versions of income statements, but we're going to look at this version here. And the reason why is I want to point out at the bottom of my screen, this is standard NetSuite where I can have a series of filters that let me select how do I want to view my P&L. In other words, I want to see a P&L for my consolidated company, but I want to see it displayed by accounting period. So I'm going to select that in my filter, hit refresh, and now NetSuite is showing me that P&L by accounting period. If I want to see that same P&L by subsidiary on a consolidated basis, change the filter. Here is now my P&L by subsidiary. You'll notice the subsidiaries are up at the top of the screen, the GL accounts on the left side of the screen. So every report in NetSuite is designed to make it efficient for the consumer of that report to see the data, how it makes the most sense to them. For example, I'm going to look at my P&L by class. Now, class is a segment in NetSuite that helps us define the nature of a transaction. In this case, the product line. So you'll notice at the top of my P&L, I have Business Edition, Consulting, Enterprise Edition, and on the left panel, I've got my different GL accounts. And let's say that there is this Business Edition $1.6 million revenue number for subscription licenses. Where did that come from? I need to understand how that number ended up on my P&L. What's the source? Perhaps I'm being audited and I need to prove out that number in my auditor's testing. Well, every report in NetSuite is drillable. So if I click on that $1.6 million number, NetSuite's showing me all of the journal entries that made up that number. But perhaps I want to add more data. Every report in NetSuite has this customize button. And what that means is I can now click the button and with the right permissions, add additional data, change my report layout and add more columns. In fact, I want to add a column called created by. I want to know each of those journal entries in my drill down, who created those. So I'm finding that field. I'm going to add it to my report and click preview. When that report refreshes, you'll notice the created by field has been added. And let's say that my auditor wants to see this $97,000 journal entry number 1580. Well, I can drill into that. Notice as I hover over, it said view transaction record. Here is the journal entry. And this is the beauty of NetSuite. Not only does it show all of the details, right? My segmentation and communication. Where did the approval occur? Who approved? When was it approved? In my Files tab, there is supporting documentation, and it is simple as dragging and dropping files onto transactions and onto customer accounts, for example, in NetSuite. User notes. What happened with this journal entry? Well, it looks like it was validated. And beyond that, NetSuite is completely auditable. Everything that a user does when they interact with records in NetSuite is tracked. And in this example, you can see in my system information tab, date and timestamp, who was the user that made the change? What did they do? What field did they impact? What were the values before and after? So now, in that example I gave, I'm able to show the auditor exactly where that number came from on my P&L. Who made it? What was the source? What is the supporting documentation? Who touched that record? Everything is auditable, traceable, and trackable. Now, that really speaks to also NetSuite's segregation of responsibilities. So you're managing a business, you need to make sure that your data is accurate and that the right people are able to see it and interact with it. And the example I'm going to show is if I move to my administrator role, just to illustrate, well, how does NetSuite control what users can see and do? Now, in my administrator role, I am responsible for managing permissions of the user. Now, these permissions come pre-built with NetSuite, but I can modify them later on through simple point and click configuration. So if, for example, I dig into my accounts payable analyst role, I can define which subsidiaries does that user have access to? What types of transactions can they interact with? And is it view access, full access, edit access? I can reconfigure these to fine tune my business processes in NetSuite with just a few mouse clicks. Another example, what reports do I want my AP analyst to have visibility into? All of my AP reporting, my purchase reporting, but notice I don't have my AP analyst being able to see perhaps my balance sheet or my P&L. This is the power of NetSuite. These roles, these permissions, these controls come pre-built with NetSuite. And all of the roles define the dashboards. So for example, I'm going to look at my AP analyst role. I wear many hats in my organization. I need to look at my NetSuite data from an AP analyst lens. So I've now selected, you'll notice in the upper right corner of the screen, my AP analyst role. And my dashboard is built to make my job efficient. Reminders. Hey, I have orders to receive. I have bills to pay. I can click on those, get my job done, get them off my plate. I need to see my AP register. Here is my AP aging. So all of the metrics and shortcuts and bar charts and graphs are geared towards my AP role. Now, if I switch to my accountant role, I'm seeing my NetSuite data through a different lens. It's focused on accounting, like my trial balance, making a journal entry. Here are my period close tasks, color coded based on status and importance. So again, all of this is pre-built with NetSuite, making it easy for businesses that are startups to get their job done, or very large businesses that have very well-defined roles. All of the NetSuite capabilities are built to support businesses across that range. One other thing I wanted to show about these pre-built roles, I've been showing very tactical roles here, AP role, accounting role. Well, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to move into my CFO role. I am a CFO. I need to see information that my investors are demanding of me, or maybe my bank covenants require a certain debt to equity ratio or a certain operating cash flow level. Well, those are just some of the metrics that I see here on my CFO dashboard. Board metrics. What is my debt to equity? What is my DSO, right? I need this information to satisfy bank covenants. And if I hover over those, I can see exactly what numbers make up those components. In this case, what is the formula? And those are all drillable. All of my KPIs here are drillable as well. I'm CFO and I see that, well, I've got a huge increase in my expenses period over period. Where did that come from? Well, let's look at this $490,000 number. I can drill into the P&L line and see, Well, there's a pretty substantial miscellaneous expense. I need to take a look at that. Did it get approved? Where did it come from? Well, there's a significant number of journal entries, and this one here really stands out. Let's take a look at that. This $374,000 journal entry. I need to know, where did that come from? Well, it looks like it was for some miscellaneous expense for C-level relocation, right? So I was able to see, where did that expense increase come from? And even in my audit log, my system information, I can see exactly when and who made that journal entry. I can go back to them and ask, why was this made? Typically, though, I'm going to have an approval process in NetSuite to make sure that the right eyes are on these types of transactions. So I'm hoping that what you're seeing here by me moving between these roles is that there is pre-built functionality that is geared towards each individual user's job responsibilities, designed to make them use NetSuite in a very efficient manner. But beyond that, one other thing on this dashboard here is, as an individual user, if I hit personalize, this now allows me to add additional data to my dashboard. I just added another KPI, and now let's say I want to see expenses. I want to keep track of all those expenses that my CFO was just looking at. Well, I just added a expense graph to my dashboard so I can see and head off any questions that might be asked about my expenses. Later on, I want to remove it. Boom, as an individual user, I can do that very quickly. Now, these transactions, the revenue numbers, the expenses, where do those come from? Well, I want to show you an example of additional functionality and automation that is important to many businesses in NetSuite. I'm going to shift into a billing administrator role, and we're going to focus on billing and revenue to kind of wrap up this demonstration here. In this role, I'm seeing reminders that are geared towards billing, invoices that have been rejected, customers to bill, renewals of contracts that are coming up, suspended subscriptions, a lot of information about managing my billing. But I want to focus on my revenue metrics, right? Subscription metrics or SaaS metrics. You have a number of different names for these in industries, depending on the industry. In this case, we're going to call it revenue metrics. I need to know, how's my revenue doing? What is my annual recurring revenue, my monthly recurring revenue? What is my revenue roll forward? What are my churn rates, my customer acquisition costs, et cetera? This is an example of pre-built NetSuite functionality that helps you monitor and understand your revenue streams. Now, this is all drillable. So let's say I see $12,500 in revenue new in January. Well, let's see where that came from. Drill into that number. It is from a subscription. Here's the source transaction. Let's look at that source transaction. I really want to understand the details around that revenue number. So NetSuite now opens up the source contract, and I can see in this contract, what are the items that are being billed to this customer? Couple of different SKUs. Some of them are being billed in advance, some in arrears. What is the pricing for each of those SKUs? Well, I have a recurring charge that is $2,400 being billed annually. I've got some usage alerts with tiered rates being billed on a monthly basis. So this is an example of how to do your billing in NetSuite. Set up a contract or a subscription. Identify, what did the customer buy? What are the rates they're paying? Discounts. What is the billing cadence? From there, this set it and forget it functionality will first of all generate invoices. So I'm going to open up an invoice here that was generated off of this contract. Invoice number 12112. It is for some monitoring subscription for a 1-year period, $2,400, right? Pretty basic information. I'm billing the customer in advance. Now, on that same contract, I want to understand the revenue for that annual billed item. So NetSuite has generated a revenue arrangement, identified all of the performance obligations in that contract and how and when will they be recognized? And for example, that BioCapt monitoring subscription item that I build in advance, well, if I drill into the details around the revenue plan, that $4,800 amount that is effective over the customer's 2-year term will be recognized ratably. So each month, NetSuite's automatically identified how much revenue will be recognized. This is automating deferred revenue management. This is important. This is key functionality for companies that bill customers in advance or even in arrears. There may be some things that go to deferred revenue. NetSuite will manage that automatically, and NetSuite will also create, as you can see here, the journal entries around reducing the deferred revenue balance, recognizing the revenue. In fact, I can see that up here where NetSuite is identifying total recognized and the deferred balance. So how did I get there? Again, I was looking at my SaaS 360 dashboard, and I saw this number here that I wanted to drill into. Where did that $12,500 new revenue number come from? I drilled in, couple of mouse clicks. I was able to see everything about that contract that is relevant to me in understanding my revenue number. So this is NetSuite. From small customers that may not need all of this functionality to begin with, to large customers that might leverage all of this functionality, NetSuite supports businesses at both ends of that spectrum. These functionalities, you can start small and layer them in over time. So you may not have, for example, all of these entities across the globe, but it's good to know that NetSuite supports you if and when your business grows to that extent. So I'm going to open it up to any questions here about what I've shown. I know I covered a lot of ground there, but any questions from the audience?
Any questions? As we're waiting to see questions come in here, I think the microphones are muted. So if you could put a question in the chat session. My takeaway at $370,000 C-level relocation expense. Wow. I
had
noted,
to throw that in there as an example to really show, hey, somebody wants to know about it.
As we're waiting I don't see any questions coming through right now, but I mean, Frank, thank you so much for the demo. As they come in, I'll shout them out. And Michael, everything that you heard from Michael and everything that you've seen right now from Frank is exactly why MontPac became a NetSuite BPO partner. Feel part of our role as your outsourced accounting team is to make the correct recommendations on how we can make your accounting policies and procedures better. So, I mean, it made sense to MontPac to partner with the best in class solution. And after looking at multiple of the solutions out there, we chose to partner with NetSuite. And so not only did MontPac become a BPO partner, we ourselves internally are migrating internally to NetSuite as well and becoming a NetSuite customer. And so to talk a little bit further on that, and again, if you have any questions, please type them in here and I'll switch over. But to touch a little bit further on that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our CEO, Mr. Monty Montgomery. Monty?
Thanks, Don. And thank you, Frank and Michael. That was a great explanation of the value of NetSuite and how it actually works in practice. And, MontPac looked very carefully at a number of solutions before we chose to go with NetSuite. But, there's a lot of reasons why we chose NetSuite. And one of them is that, fundamentally, we believe that our role is to provide accurate and insightful financial information in a timely manner. And if we do that, entrepreneurs will make great business decisions. But that gets more challenging as a company grows. Our client base, of 750 or some odd clients, they vary in size and complexity, and they're across industries. We needed a solution that was pretty strong across all these. It just makes us more efficient. We wanted, not to have a million tools in our tech stack. And it seems like, obviously, companies, can start with QuickBooks Online. It's simple. But that only worked for so long until you've got to the point where you've added complexity, you're adding multiple tools in your tech stack. Oddly enough, startups seem to have subsidiaries much earlier in their existence than they did years ago. It's just sort of a global world, a world we're in. There's dev teams all across the world, in India, Eastern Europe, LATAM. Obviously, we're a global company with a US parent and a Philippine subsidiary. And then when you have that, you have consolidations, which are done manually, typically in Excel, error prone, or they're not done at all. And then you're not giving management a global view of what's really happening. And I think Frank's demo showed that really well with all of those subsidiaries. You may just have two, but eventually you'll have more. So, as a company scales, like when do you make the switch to a real ERP? And every time I've been through an acquisition as a CFO, it's always like, what ERP are you using? And they, or an audit, they want to know what tool you're using. Is it legit? Does it have controls? Will it allow you to scale? Is there a tool that enables you to create accurate financial information and without, errors slipping through? So all these things start to add up, and the task of migrating later in a startup or a company's life just gets more complicated, but also more disruptive to that organization. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to take away, there's more things to consolidate as opposed to just add features that you have latent in NetSuite, but not turned on yet. So all these things just make it more efficient. So the one of the real things though was this suite success, which I can't overemphasize how cool that is. It is an instant setup that is going to represent what your company should be run in best practices, and that's kind of what we do. I'm wearing our SaaSonomics t-shirt, which is our sub brand for SaaS. We have over 110 SaaS clients. There's a certain chart of accounts, a certain metrics, everything. We can set up an instance of that and quickly do that migration and set it up in a matter of days to do the implementation of that. And then the migration, that makes it quite easy relative to the multi-month thing that people are scared about with the big switching to an ERP. So, all these things just add up to do it earlier, do it under this BPO program, which makes it both cost effective and takes a lot off your plate as a management team. And the nice thing is, as Michael mentioned, transitioning off of the BPO program to your own instance is not something that you're locked into with MontPac. It's an easy switch. And, one of our, beliefs here at MontPac is we don't have long-term contracts with our clients. We earn it every month. And we've been in 20 years, as you can see from my screen background. And we've done that, with a 90% referral of how we get our clients. So all these things add up to just doing good work a month in, month out. And so it sort of fits in with our culture in that way. And there's one other sort of key point to this. We're obviously getting into the AI era. We have to do that in a very safe manner. It's a little uncertain right now. I, as a CFO, despite being CEO, I have sort of a CFO mindset. And I'm a little leery of some of the tools, the AI agents having too much autonomy, not having a very reputable company backing up these tools. It could be a great startup and a great tool, but if it makes a massive mistake in your business, who do you want supporting that? Oracle with their balance sheet, or some venture-backed startup with 3 months of cash in the bank? So I'm much more comfortable going into the AI era with Oracle and NetSuite as a partner. So those are just some of the many reasons. I think it just sort of reiterates what Frank showed and Michael explained. But I think combining our financial acumen and infrastructure with a great tool in a modern ERP platform earlier in your tenure allows you to get to that exit later in life more smoothly in all the events, and you'll be making better decisions along the way. So, the positive outcomes for, MontPac clients, we're going to have better reporting. We're going to be more efficient. You'll probably have fewer tools in your stack, more consolidated. And really it's about scale. And you can scale with MontPac. You can't outgrow MontPac unless you're a very large organization, but we can scale with ours. And if you're on a system that doesn't prevent the scale either, like NetSuite, it's an amazing, combination. And I'm really excited about the future of MontPac and NetSuite. and integrating AI agents into our workflows and all the benefits that's going to come from that. So that's pretty much it for me. Do we have any questions, Don? You're on mute.
If I had a nickel for every time I've done that. We did have a few questions come through. And so we'll use the last couple of minutes here to first question coming through is the version of NetSuite that I'm on the same as the version that the larger customers are on? So maybe I'll turn that over to the NetSuite team. Michael, you're on mute. Here's your nickel.
Yeah, I'll give it back to you. So yeah, great question, and it is. So the version of NetSuite that you're on, again, the underlying technology, the underlying capability, like the reporting and the dashboards and the capabilities, exactly the same for a pre-revenue startup as it is for an enterprise. It really is just the way that the system is configured, right? As a small company, you want pretty simple, pretty straightforward configuration, and then as you grow, you might need to have, you might need a multi-step approval process, right? Whereas with a small company, you don't, right? It's a great example, and that's just something that you build and you develop over time. And again, I almost call it like a rolling implementation or an on-demand implementation, right? You start with something very simple that is suited for you, that can be set up very quickly, and as those needs change, as as you need more sophisticated capabilities, you just add that. But it is exactly the same system, security, underlying technology as our enterprise clients that you're using as a small company or a company that's using it under a BPO partnership or BPO partner like MontPac. Great
Awesome.
question.
Thank you so much. Next question I have here is, can you connect NetSuite to AI tools like OpenAI or Claude?
Yeah, great question. So I think Monty hit it on the head, right? I think that this is a new thing, right? Everybody's excited about it, and everybody's rushing in. And I think that Monty hit a couple of things right on the head in terms of what you want to be thinking about here. So the answer to the question specifically is absolutely, right? We have something called an MCP, right? It's a new term. It is essentially a connector between an application like NetSuite and an AI tool like Claude or OpenAI. And we have the ability to hook NetSuite to Claude or OpenAI. I think that the things you want to be thinking about there are data governance and data security. This is why I think, again, NetSuite has a great built-in advantage that we are running those in our data center. We are managing the data governance as we release those, right? So not if you're connecting via the MCP, just to be clear, but once we release our AI capabilities over the next few months, that will all be in one data center. The data governance will be there. The data security will be there. And that is, to Monty's point, not something that you see with other companies. We've already seen, I will not name names. You can Google it probably if you want, but there was a large competitor of NetSuite that released an AI, and the AI started giving data about one company to other people, right? Because they did not set that up correctly. Those are the things that NetSuite, because we're going to have that AI built into the tool, that will not be a problem. That will not be something you need to worry about. I think that's a big differentiator between those. But if you do want to connect NetSuite to we call it bring your own AI, right? If you want to build your own AI or connect it to one of those systems that's out there, absolutely you have that option as well.
Awesome.
Oh, and I'll add one other thing too. We will, I think, to Monty mentioned agents, right? That's a new hot thing in AI. We are going to have an AI builder. So not only will you have this kind of governance around AI that you can use kind of native to NetSuite or within the NetSuite solution, you will, if you have the tools and you want to be able to build your own agent, we are going to be releasing an AI builder, an AI agentic AI builder that you can just, again, configure your own AIs and have those work the way that you want them to. And or there'll be third parties that will have AI agents as well that they'll be developing that you can leverage. So again, kind of hit the easy button and do it the way that works best for you.
Awesome. Our final question that we have here is, can you give me any examples of companies that started on an outsourcing license and grew from there?
Yeah, so I guess the two that come to mind are actually two of our earliest clients, right? So going way back quite a while here, maybe 10 years. So Slack was actually one of our first BPO clients through a BPO partner. They grew from pre-revenue, right? They got into NetSuite via a BPO partner when they were pre-revenue. They were on the exact same NetSuite instance when they went public, right? Now they brought that license in-house at some point, along that journey, and so they weren't under the BPO program when they went public, just for all sorts of reasons. But yeah, they were on the exact same they never had to re-implement between that kind of early stage pre-revenue, kind of a profile and a global public company, right? So great example. The other one that comes to mind is Ring, right? So Ring doorbells started on NetSuite, very early product company, right? So you had Slack, a software company, you have Ring doorbells, a product company. They started on NetSuite under a BPO partnership when they were acquired by Amazon. I think it was $4 billion is what they're acquired for. They're running the exact same NetSuite instance again. So one maybe more project, more rev rec, more software. Another one is more product. I mean they did everything, right? That's again great example of NetSuite flexibility, is that if you have products and software like Ring, you can do both of those in one system, and again hit that easy button and it will support that growth like it did for Ring. Again, the same system, never had to re-implement from pre-revenue to being acquired for $4 billion. So that really is, guys, that is the reason that companies go with NetSuite, is it supports that growth, lets you focus on your core mission and disrupting those markets that you're trying to get into.
Awesome. Michael, thank you so much. I'm looking, I don't see any additional questions. We're also coming up to the top of an hour here. So I would like to very much thank our NetSuite folks, Michael, Taylor, Frank, thank you so much. I think we have, during the course of this hour, debunked some of the myths. Way too expensive. I think we touched on that. It's way too complex. This is too much for my small little early stage startup company. I think we touched on that. It's going to take way too long to migrate. I think we've touched on all of those things. Demo, Frank, that you gave was amazing. And so Monty, thank you so much for your insights as well. And I guess that wraps up this webinar, Debunking Myths of NetSuite. And again, thank you all very much for joining. Thank you, team and panelists, for joining as well. And we will see you all on the next one. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.